I'm going to get going because we're a few minutes late and I know you folks are busy, but also I want to save as much time as I possibly can so that you can hear from the promised student panel. That is people who applied this year for Fulbright and have volunteered to come share their experiences, and you can ask any questions that you want. Please come in. You can ask any questions that you want of them, so I want to save as much time as possible for that. In the meantime, welcome. I'm Kate Dalinger. I'm the Director for Fellowship Programs here at Wellesley. I've been here for 3 years, but I've been doing fellowships advising for longer than that. I started, now about 12 years ago, and I did fellowships advising at Yale for about 9 years before I joyfully bailed to come to Wellesley. I'm not myself a Wellesley alumna, but I went to Bryn Mawr and to a women's college at Cambridge. And part of why I love doing what I do is that I never would have gone to college or to grad school without scholarships and fellowships. So I'm delighted that you are all thinking about cool opportunities. Any US citizen, in my view, is pretty much a potential Fulbright applicant if they're interested. Because it is open to students interested in any field. You don't have to want to go to grad school, you don't have to want to teach for life, you just have to be curious about the world. The main aim of Fulbright is to foster mutual understanding. It was started after World War II in hopes of avoiding World War III. So even if what you're doing is applying for a study research grant, the point of Fulbright is not to do earth-shattering Nobel Prize-winning research. If you do, that's fantastic. They're not going to stop you from doing that. But the point of Fulbright is to get out there and get to know another people, another place, another language, another way of looking at the world, and to bring that knowledge back with you. They want you to go out and represent the full diversity of America so that people abroad realize that some of the ugly American stereotypes that are out there for, unfortunately, some good reasons, don't apply to all of us. It's about knocking some of the edges off of the fear of the unknown. It's about having amazing folks like you go out there and do amazing things in the world. And they're kind of hoping that you'll get the kind of left-handed compliments that I got when I was studying and working abroad. Things like, gosh, I didn't know Americans could be so civilized, or, Again, what that meant was that I was changing people's minds, and my mind certainly was changed. I grew in a million different ways, and so I'm really excited that you are all here thinking about the adventure. Can I get a quick show of hands just to get a sense of who's in the room? How many first years? All right. Planning ahead, I love it. Sophomores, fantastic. Juniors, brava, fantastic. Seniors, yay. You are all in exactly the right place. There are all kinds of opportunities for all of you, and in fact, seniors, I've even brought handouts on fellowship options for alumni. You still have access, all of you, to fellowships and career advising for life, even after you graduate. Out of sight does not mean out of mind. So, thank you for planning ahead and getting out there and thinking about cool things. What is Fulbright anyway? As I mentioned, it was founded after World War II by Congress. It is, in fact, an exchange. We bring international students to this country to be graduate students in the US, and just as we send Americans out to help other folks learn English, we bring other folks to this country to help Americans learn other languages. There is, in fact, a fabulous teacher of Arabic at Wellesley this year who's here as a Fulbright. And we routinely have Fulbrighters visiting to teach languages. So it's a really cool exchange. And as I mentioned, the main aim is to increase mutual understanding between people of the US and people of other countries. One of the things you want to be thinking about with Fulbright is because it's an exchange and it's administered both in the US and overseas, when you're putting together a Fulbright application, you always want to remember that there are ideally two audiences for your application, one in the US and one abroad. So if you're proposing to go to China, talking about how terrible X policy is not going to be a good way to win friends and influence people. Just as if somebody wrote a proposal to come to the US and said, boy, those Americans just can't get it together about X, I want to figure out why. We're probably not going to be all that thrilled either. So again, you want to think about the dual audience for any Fulbright application. And again, this is about fostering mutual understanding. You want to win friends and influence people. This is not to say that you can't be who you are and explore what you want to do. but you want to do so in a way that is going to keep you safe and allow you to do really interesting work, and hopefully have your hosts enjoy having you as a guest in their country. You want to think about being a good guest. Fulbright is open to graduating seniors, to recent graduates, to graduate students, early career professionals. There is technically no upper age limit for Fulbright, though there is a preference for younger candidates. What this means is that Davis scholars at Wellesley, who are often frustrated by age limits on things, don't need to worry about that with Fulbright. You must be a US citizen by the time that you apply for Fulbright, so if you are waiting on naturalization, you may have to wait to apply for Fulbright, but I can help folks navigate that. And you must have a bachelor's degree by the time that you would start a grant. So if you apply in August, just before your senior year starts, by the time the grant would start the following summer or winter, you would have your bachelor's degree. If you're a December grad, you want to apply in the August before you finish so that you could then start in the following academic year. You may not yet have attained your doctorate. There is a separate Fulbright competition. Hi, come on in. There's a separate Fulbright competition for people with PhDs or working on PhDs. In fact, various competitions. And then also, as you're thinking about eligibility, there can be some specific country requirements. Some countries, for visa reasons, for example, are not open to dual citizens. Other countries, it's not an issue. With more than 140 countries involved with Fulbright, the devil's in the details, and you always want to check the country-specific information. But, again, with more than 140 countries involved, you could go lots of different places. You could spend time in a classroom helping people learn English. You could spend time in a lab. You could spend time out in the field. You could be doing lots of amazing things. So this is a really good moment to start dreaming. Where would you go? What would you do? What actually is Fulbright? You apply either for a study research grant or for an English teaching assistantship. They make a lot of awards every year. They typically run 8 to 10 months, and it's typically tied to the academic calendar of the country that you'd be going to. So if you're going, for example, to the Southern Hemisphere, your grant might not start until the new year, because the academic year is going to look different than it does here in the Northern Hemisphere. Again, lots of different options. The reason it says approximately 75 countries for the English teaching assistantships, it's always changing. They're always adding new programs, sometimes after the application deadline. And occasionally I've known people who applied for one country get offered an English teaching assistantship for another country because a new opportunity has arisen. That happened a number of years ago when Rwanda first offered English teaching assistantships. I was working with a graduating senior who had applied for a Fulbright to Vietnam. And she got a phone call one day and they said, you know, I know you applied for Vietnam, but might you be interested in going to Rwanda? And she was like, wow, not even the same continent, but let me think about it. We talked it over. And she actually wound up being one of the 2 first English teaching assistants to go to Rwanda, and she had an amazing time. So flexibility is always a good thing in fellowship applicants. You know, you don't have to make decisions like that ahead of time or be too worried about it, but it does occasionally happen because there's so many new cool opportunities coming up. For the study research grants, you might be doing an independent research project. You might be doing a proposal that's more related to an arts project. You could be spending a year in someone's lab. Even if you're doing something like a quote-unquote independent research project, it might be that you are contributing to a larger ongoing piece of research in your host country, like joining somebody's existing lab or joining an existing research project, but you still have to be able to talk about what you would hope to learn by doing this. So that's a really interesting opportunity. There are a few opportunities to do things like get a master's degree abroad in some countries. Mexico, for example, offers a whole series of really fascinating binational internships that are supported by Fulbright. There are a lot of really quirky things. Fulbright is, generally speaking, open to more academic proposals, but they don't necessarily have to be purely academic, if you see what I mean. In fact, as you were looking at the poster for today's session, you saw a photograph of Leilani Stacy, who graduated last year and is currently a Fulbright study research grantee in Portugal. She's doing a self-designed research project looking at female entrepreneurship and how one fosters that and how women feel supported or don't and what they would need to feel supported in being small business owners, which relates both to her academic research, her academic interests here at Wellesley as a social sciences major, but also to her own personal and professional aspirations. She has she's getting some advice from a faculty member at a Portuguese university, but she's also working with some nonprofits that are doing work to foster entrepreneurship and to support women in business. And so she's having this really cool, definitely outside the classroom, definitely self-designed, not a whole lot of structure, which can be a bit of a change after Wellesley, and not everything scheduled all the time, not lots of feedback. You're making this up for yourself as a design your own adventure. The English teaching assistantships are more structured. Typically you would be assisting a professional teacher of English in a classroom abroad at any level from elementary school through university level. And I'll more about that in a moment. And that, at least in most instances, you're working with a teacher. So there is, there's the class day. You're working for this teacher or maybe a group of other teachers. There's a little more structure and support. As you're thinking about, I'm really torn. Would I want to do an English teaching assistantship or maybe a study research grant? Part of it might be, do I want to design my own adventure or am I looking for something a little more structured? Again, spending all day, every day in a lab contributing to an existing research project can provide structure too. Some of it is to think about what you're comfortable with, what you have experience with, play to your strengths with a proposal. Whatever you propose to do, I want it to be something that feels like a good fit for you, both in terms of your background and preparation, but also, would it be something you'd actually really enjoy doing? If you win the chance to do this, I want you to have as good a time doing that as I did studying Dark Age reading practices. I know, weird, to each her own, right? Next up, there are also some really interesting special award opportunities, including the Critical Language Enhancement Awards, which offer additional training in particular languages if you win a Fulbright to go to one of the eligible countries. Again, this has to do with the critical languages, thinking about US interests, and so they're particularly interested in Arabic, Bahasa Indonesia, Bangla, Bengali, Mandarin, Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, Punjabi, Russian, and Urdu. CLIA changes a little bit from year to year. You don't have to do a whole separate application, you just do a little separate piece of an existing Fulbright application to say that you're interested in this. They offer a whole bunch of things. It really is a fully funded year abroad. You're not going to, stay at the Ritz and dine out at fancy restaurants every night, but it's enough to cover. It's a grant towards cost of living. And in some countries, if you win an award to do graduate work, you also win tuition benefits. And I can talk more about that with folks who are interested specifically. But they also cover round-trip airfare, accident and sickness, and various and sundry other things. For those of you whose families may be a little anxious about having you spend a year far, far away, spending a year abroad as a Fulbrighter is one of the safest ways to live abroad as an American because the program is run by the US Department of State, and so you're very much under the wing of the State Department. I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen tsunamis and revolutions and outbreaks of Ebola and all kinds of things happen. Fulbrighters are very well taken care of. So you might use that as a good way to sell this to folks who are skeptical. The application, for all I was talking about design your own adventure, is not impossible. To apply for a statement, you need a statement of grant purpose, a personal statement, 3 references, any applicable foreign language evaluations, unofficial transcripts, the campus committee evaluation you get if you meet the campus deadline, and you should all meet the campus deadline if you're interested in applying for Fulbright, because the sole purpose of the Wellesley Fulbright Committee is to help every applicant put forward the strongest possible application. They are a lovely and amazing group of people, and they volunteer to do this in September every year, which is a very busy month on campus, but they make time to do this every year because they love doing it and they give helpful advice. And so if you wondered, why the campus deadline is so much earlier than the national deadline, it's to give the campus committee a chance to help you out. Other pieces, if you're applying for the statement of grant purpose, you'd need letters of affiliation. So remember I mentioned Leilani, and she's doing a cool project in Portugal looking at entrepreneurship. She had a letter from the professor at the local university. She had a letter from somebody at the nonprofit she'd found. She cold emailed people, by the way, and you'd be surprised how often people write back. It's basically you write and say, I think what you're doing is really cool. If I were to get funded by Fulbright to come spend a year with you, could I be useful to you? That's, free labor is usually something people are not real averse to. So you might be surprised how generous folks are with letters of affiliation. For arts proposals, supplementary materials may be required. Again, I can talk more about that with folks who are interested specifically. What are they looking for? It sounds really cool. There are lots of awards, but it's a big name thing. I bet it's competitive. Every fellowship is competitive. One of the cool things about Fulbright is they're really looking at the fit and feasibility of the proposal. If I were to say I wanted to go study astrophysics in Chile, they'd look at me like I had 3 heads. I have no background in astrophysics. I can't speak the relevant languages. It just doesn't make sense. However, if you can show your relevant academic, professional, and other experience, did you do a cool internship? Did you do some volunteer work that gave you some skills? If you're applying for an English teaching assistantship, were you a camp counselor, or did you teach Sunday school, or did you do something else that gave you some relevant experience that might be helpful to you in the classroom? Personal qualifications. This is not the are you the best thing in the world? This is are you flexible? Are you open-minded? Are you curious? You need to be those things to spend a year living abroad and potentially working for somebody else. They're looking for remember I said they're not looking to support Nobel Prize winning research. If you do the most amazing research proposal the world has ever seen, but you don't talk about what your plan is to get to know people and make connections and practice the language and get to know the place where you are, that's not a good Fulbright proposal. It needs to have that mutual understanding piece really clearly through the application. Remember I said the devil's in the details. Every country is looking for something in particular. So even the English teaching assistantships, in different countries, they're looking for different things. In some countries, you're required already to be a certified teacher of English as a foreign language. In others, they're just looking for keen graduating seniors and recent alums who can help out in a classroom. To the extent that you can find something, a project and a proposal that's a really good fit for you and what they're looking for, that's going to be a much more successful application. Don't decide you can't do this, please, without coming to talk come in with Caitlin or me. They're also looking at the desirability of achieving diversity. Remember I said they wanted to send folks abroad who would represent the full, rich American experience. They really, really mean that. And in fact, I have been able to be a fly on the wall when the US screening committee is making decisions. And if they're looking at 2 applications that are in every way really equally strong, but one of them comes from somebody who's had a lot of opportunities and one of them comes from somebody who hasn't, guess who's going to get it? The person who hasn't had a lot of opportunities. They really want to give folks as many possibilities as possible. Now, this doesn't mean if you've had cool opportunities, and by definition, you folks have had some cool opportunities. You're here at Wellesley, right? Wellesley folks still have an amazing track record with applying for Fulbright. The application timeline, again, now's the time to explore. Get thinking about what you'd want to do. Learn more about Fulbright. Start looking at those country-specific pages. Deciding, do I want to apply for an English teaching assistantship or maybe a study research grant? Go talk to your faculty mentors. Go talk to your professional mentors and other people in your network. Start thinking about what you would do. Come talk to me. Come talk to Caitlin. I know I keep talking about this random Caitlin person who's not here. She is my partner in the fellowships office here, and she has been at Wellesley doing fellowships advising for a year. She has a teaching background, and she's wonderfully helpful, especially for people applying for the ETAs. Again, I mentioned campus deadlines. There's an optional draft deadline on August 1st, which I know seems really early. The idea behind that is, one, to give you an early deadline to shoot for so that by the time the campus deadline comes, you've got a really beautiful application. And 2, to help us out. Because what I want to be able to do, Caitlin and I want to be able to do, is to offer you feedback on drafts before the campus application deadline, which is going to be at the end of August. There are only so many hours in the day. People who meet the draft deadline take priority for the limited advising appointments during August. We'll fit everybody else in as we can, but if you meet the deadline, that's good for you in a lot of different ways. Then what happens, the campus committee reads applications, they do interviews, they ask you all kinds of questions, they give you feedback. You have a chance to make changes to your application before we get everything in well in advance of the national deadline at the beginning of October. And then it's a really long wait, as some of the folks in the room can attest. The US screening committee is reading applications. The strongest applications get recommended to be read abroad. And again, they're looking at the pool in a given year and lots of different factors. So you could do everything right, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen after that. You find out in January whether or not your application's been forwarded to read abroad. And then somewhere between March and June, you find out what happened as a result of that. I know that's really long, it's really late, it's really tedious, I can talk more about that, but it's worth the wait. There are all kinds of cool possibilities out there. You can learn more on the Fulbright website, which has a myriad of amazing resources. You can check out the study research grants. Remember I said the devil's in the details, so if you start looking at the page for Tajikistan for the study research awards, they'll tell you what the profile looks like, what kinds of candidates they're looking for, how much language proficiency you need, and a whole bunch of other really important deadlines. As you're trying to figure out, an English teaching assistantship sounds cool, where would I go? If you go to the Fulbright website under types of awards and English teaching assistantships, they'll offer a grid like this that gives you a summary, for example, of what opportunities are available to teach English in East Asia and the Pacific. They'll tell you the country, the number of grants available, whether it's at the university level or primary or secondary school. Would you be in a major city or a rural area? How many teaching hours per week would you be required to put in? And what of the host country language, what are the requirements about the fluency in the language of the host country? And then having looked at that, if the particular country sounds intriguing, then you want to go to the country page and check out the ETA details there. Wellesley Fellowship resources include our website, advising appointments. You can book an advising appointment online via Handshake, and we can talk in person via phone or video chat. I'm here, we do advising all summer long. We're here through breaks. We're here all sorts of times. You don't have to wait until August to come talk to us. Please don't. Come chat with us before you leave campus. Drop by pop-up advising at the Lulu on a Friday between 12:30 and 2:30, or watch out for virtual pop-ups, which we added for alumni and for folks studying abroad. There are also webinars, recorded intro sessions, a whole slew of things, as well as all the campus details about how to apply for Fulbright support with the Wellesley Committee. On our website, you will also find other cool opportunities. Don't forget to check the deadlines page and filter it. All kinds of cool things there. That helps you keep track of upcoming deadlines in chronological order. You can filter it to show travel fellowships, or fellowships just for undergrads, or just postgraduate, that is fellowships for after graduation, or just fellowships for international students. So if you have friends who thought, everything's only for Americans, please tell them that's not true, and ask them to come talk to me. Other events are coming up. If you are not feeling completely overwhelmed already, or even if you are, I would say, please take a chance on this. Take a chance on yourself. Applying for something like this is an investment in yourself. It gives you are giving yourself the time to think about, what would I go do if I could go spend a year doing something really cool? How does that fit onto what I've already done? How does it potentially fit into the bigger picture, however hazy your concept of the bigger picture may be? Very hazy for me when I was graduating from college, and it all worked out. You don't have to have a 50-year plan for yourself. Fellowships and scholarships, like Fulbright, are always competitive, but I promise that I will always be honest with you and share any cause for concern I may see, like a weakness in an application. And there are two guarantees with fellowships. One is, if you don't apply, you can't possibly get it. And the second is, if you're willing to put the work in, the application process is in and of itself absolutely valuable. If the least that you get out of this is a clear sense of where you're going and what you want to do, and you've had some practice making a good persuasive case for yourself in writing and in an interview, that's going to be valuable to you when you apply for jobs, when you apply for graduate or professional school, even if you never apply for another fellowship or scholarship, though I hope that won't be the case. It's a valuable process. Last but not least, you don't have to do this alone. There are alumni like these Wellesley Fulbright applicants who, by the way, were the Fulbrighters in 2017-18, which I include simply because it's a fun group and because Lisa Arias here went on, while she was an English on a Fulbright, won a Scoville to do international relations placement in DC this year. And Isabel St. Cloud, who actually won the chance to extend her English teaching assistantship in Taiwan to a second year. So she's still in Taiwan as a Fulbrighter and having an amazing year. Again, you don't have to do this alone. You've got alumni who are willing to help out. Caitlin and I are in the fellowships office. We have colleagues in career education. We have advice on writing personal statements and proposals and 1,000,006 different things. Faculty are amazing. Deans, all sorts of people are here to support you in your application. And in fact, a number of those folks are here right now. And if I could ask the guest speakers to come to the front of the room. And while you do that, I'm going to put up some next steps for students to think about. Come on up. I know you're here. I know at least one of you has to run quickly. So Sarah, I'm going to put you on the spot and make you start since you have to get on a bike and go to class.
Yeah, get on a bike and go to class. I'm Sarah. I applied for a graduate fellowship or to support my graduate studies at University of British Columbia through Fulbright. So that's in Canada. And the work I would be doing is using drones to survey forests to understand how forests recover post-wildfire.
Because you're a geosciences major here.
I'm a geosciences major at Wellesley College and I'm a senior. And
what would you say briefly to encourage somebody who's thinking, oh God, I couldn't do this, or what are the odds, or?
Yeah, I would say that it's I think I thought a lot about what I wanted to get out of Fulbright and like how to approach somebody to ask if I could like do research with them. But the thing is, like, if you're coming with your own money, people are very interested in you showing up. And so I think like just being not afraid to like ask and to say like, this is something I really want to do, this is something I'm really interested in, and saying that to the right person who has a similar interest based on their lab website or what their research has been in the past, like they're gonna be receptive to it. Great, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a senior neuroscience major. I applied to be an ETA in Hungary. I unfortunately did not get it, but my background a little bit, I think I said I'm a neuro major. I teach writing here, so I TA right now for the 201 class, and I've tutored writing in the past, so I was like, oh, this seems like a good fit. Even though I didn't get it, it was still a wonderful opportunity. I think, like you said, you can't get something you don't apply to, and I would have totally done it again. I think that both Kate and Caitlin were wonderful resources, and I'll probably apply again in the future.
Yay.
Claire. I'm Claire. I'm a bio-Chinese double major, and I applied to return to the place that I studied abroad in China in fall of 2017. And I'm very excited to say that I'm going back to China. I got the Fulbright, going back in the fall. I'm going to be doing some water research, doing some hands-on lab research on the major lake in Kunming.
Fantastic. And what might you say to encourage somebody who's thinking, oh gosh, I couldn't do this? Because I remember when you and I first started talking, you didn't come into this saying like, I'm definitely going back, I'm going to do this. Like, you were a little uncertain to begin with, yeah?
Definitely, yeah. It was a really, really long process. I started thinking about it at this time last year. I think just going in with a drive, just connecting with your goals and what really makes that spark ignite in your heart. Seems kind of cheesy, but just understanding what you really, really love to do. And for me, that was going back to the place that I studied abroad. And Kate was so enormously helpful. I was in Japan last summer, and I called her in with a 13-hour time gap.
Made it work.
Very, very helpful. I think one of the biggest parts of applying was the people that I got to interact with and get advice from, most notably people who had done the Fulbright or are currently doing the Fulbright. Those people are so helpful in helping you understand what Fulbright is looking for, how to craft your application. They know exactly what they're doing, so reach out to them definitely.
Fantastic, and I can help with that too. What are you curious about? What questions do you have? We just galloped through a lot of information fast. We have a fabulous group of speakers. Sarah, for just a couple of minutes more. What would you like to know? What are you curious about? What are you thinking? Okay, like it sounds good, but yeah.
I just have a question for the, I guess the ETA specific. I guess a lot of ETAs like kind of hard when you're pitching up a country, and I was wondering how you figured that out. Like why Hungary? Like they probably ask. I haven't checked it out yet, but like what the reason is for a specific country or a specific region.
Yeah, so I personally, I actually studied abroad in Denmark, so I was in Scandinavia, so I kind of tried to use that to my advantage, saying like I've been to Europe before, and then my family's Hungarian, so my grandfather and my great-grandfather were both born there. I explained that. I also talked about how growing up my family always hosted exchange students, and one of the Hungary specific requirements was like helping to kind of assist students that wanted to study in the US. So I kind of made the pitch that, you know, I've grown up with this. I know what it's like to have a foreign exchange student come study, and, you know, I've lived with them. I think also I picked Hungary because they were specific to university students, and I love kids, but sometimes that's a lot for me. I also have experience teaching college-age students. Like I TA here, I tutored here, and I really like working with peers and people that are my age, so that really contributed to my choice. And there were only a couple countries that guaranteed that you would work with university students. I really didn't want to do anything elementary or middle school education. So.
Yeah, there's often no right or wrong answer, and it's often really individual for the person who's making the application and the requirements of the specific country, but that's a great question. Other questions? Yeah.
I just have a question about how you all navigated getting recommendation letters and what recommendations you can make on what Fulbright would be looking for in a recommendation. You know, is it a combination of kind of character reference plus skills, experience?
Yeah, so my recommenders, two of them were from Wellesley, and one of them was actually from a summer internship in Canada. And yeah, I think when I was choosing my recommenders, I wanted somebody that could like speak to my ability to like come into a new situation and like do well, which is something that I think all of my recommenders would speak to. Because I think that's something Fulbright's really looking for, right? You're going to move into this new place and you're like not going to have a lot of connections. How are you going to develop those connections? And so that was something that I wanted my recommenders to be able to speak to. And then I kind of, because mine was research focused, I like chose recommenders that could speak to my ability to do research in that area.
Yeah, I did the same. I had a couple, I had both my boss from tutoring and my boss from TAing, so they knew my ability to teach English. So for an ETA, I thought that was pretty relevant. And then my third was actually my major, well, pseudo major advisor. So she actually had nothing to do with English teaching because she was neuro, but she knows me very well as a person, so that was more of a character one.
Yeah, and for the English teaching assistants, by the way, it's not a letter. They recommenders have to complete a form that asks some very specific questions, and you can see a sample form on the website. And if you're applying for an ETA, it's a really good idea to do that. So that will help you decide, oh, actually, the person who can best answer these questions is so-and-so. I'm also really happy, Caitlin and I are really happy to help you brainstorm who would be the best people to ask for which application. Because that's a hard thing. It's a little bit different with each application and with each student and with each country, and so we want to help you be strategic about that. Anything you want to add, Claire?
I think you recommended asking people who are your major advisors or people in your major, especially with the grant and doing research, people who have experience doing research with you. I actually contacted someone who was part of my study abroad program and asked her to write a recommendation letter about my ability to navigate the new environment that I was in, especially the one that I was going back to, so that was really helpful.
Also, if people have experience writing for Fulbright, like I had a very touching moment where one of my recommenders emailed me and was like, I met with a Wellesley Fulbrighter and they told me what to put in the letter, and I was like, it's so touching that like they did that without me even like talking about it. So yeah.
And I'm always happy to help recommenders who are stumped or flummoxed or looking for somebody to talk to about it. I do that all the time, and it's really fun. Other questions before Sarah has to duck out as you're thinking about research or maybe applying for a Fulbright for grad work or wondering about, I don't know, language evaluations, which was not so relevant for British Columbia, but definitely relevant for China. Other questions? Is there a piece of advice that you wish somebody had given you or something that was really helpful?
Yeah. Something that was really
What do you
helpful.
wish you'd known a year ago?
Yeah, I think that I wish I had known, to start really early.
You're all here today.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
start.
you're here today. I was on a ship in the middle of the South Pacific today a year ago, but start really early. And also, I think one of the biggest things that I learned from this is set your own deadlines that are like 10 hours before the actual deadline, so then you don't freak out like 10 minutes before every single time.
That's great. Notice, by the way, that one of the on the to-do list here is mark your calendar with deadlines, like not only August 1st, the 27th, October 8th, but like half an hour a week to like look at the website, talk to a recommender, start a draft, research like people you'd cold email. You know, you'd be surprised how much half an hour a week adds up and is totally doable and not stressful as opposed to the 11th hour, oh my gosh, how am I going to fit this all in? Thanks a million, Sarah. I'm really delighted. Olivia and Claire and I are still here. Are there other questions that people have? Are there other things that, pieces of advice something useful somebody told you or something you wish you'd known a year ago?
I think just like don't be afraid to fail. Like I think that's a really hard thing to hear at Wellesley sometimes because I think we're so like, I think a lot of people at Wellesley are like very type A and go-getters and that's why we're all here. And it definitely hurt like not getting it, but I think that like I would have, if I hadn't have tried, I would have really regretted that. And I probably will try again in the future.
That's a really good and important point. What else?
I reached out to some people who I had barely met about reading a lot of drafts from my Fulbright, and they recommended, not only were they super helpful reading all of my drafts, but they recommended being as specific as possible. Fulbright is all about feasibility, and so if you can mention names of places in the location that you're going to be in, names of organizations that you're going to join, just be so super specific. Just like
Everybody can be specific about different things, by the way,
Yeah.
so don't panic.
Yeah, but like imagine that you're there and really craft this narrative as if you're really going to be there.
Fantastic. What other questions do you folks have? You've been really patient and amazing. I'm sure there are things you're like, ooh, I wish, yeah.
This is a specific question, but they tell you if you will receive the fellowship or not fairly late in the year. So how did you navigate I'm gonna find a job, I'm waiting for this fellowship, I really want the fellowship, but maybe I need to apply to all these jobs?
Excellent question. One of you want to tackle that?
I don't know if you can go ahead. I'm probably not the best to answer this question because I put all my eggs in one basket. But I did look for internships over the summer as just like, if I didn't get this Fulbright, if I did get this Fulbright, I would still do a summer internship.
Okay.
And that would give me some extra time to figure out what I wanted to do.
Fantastic. Everybody navigates this differently, and we're really happy to help you do that. Different industries have different hiring seasons. So tech, for example, has a crazy early hiring season in the late summer, early fall, which is not a particularly good fit when you're not going to find out until the following spring about Fulbright. The upside of that is that some large organizations can be very flexible, and you can talk about with them in the course of the application process or at a certain point in the process, and we're happy to talk more about that. They might be willing to let you defer because they know they're going to hire X number of people every year, and if they know they've got you nailed down and ready to go for the following year, that's great. It saves them the hassle going forward, and they've got plenty of other people. Smaller organizations are going to have a harder time doing that. Grad schools, by the way, and remember I was at Yale for 9 years, Yale routinely defers for Fulbright. They're thrilled. They'll hold funding, like you bring great experience with you, right? It's to their advantage. They also quite like to be able to say, we have X number of Fulbrights in the incoming class. Like, you give them bragging rights. So they're delighted about that kind of thing. Other industries have later hiring seasons. So I was talking with somebody else who just found out that like the thing she was really hoping to do after graduation has not panned out. So she started like 10 days ago applying for things. She's already got 2 interviews. So it depends a little bit. And I'm really happy to talk with each of you about strategy. My colleagues in career education are really glad to help with that too. If you're thinking about applying to med school, for example, there are constraints that you want to think about vis-a-vis travel and exams and how long scores last and a whole slew of different things. We're really happy to help you with those kinds of conversations too.
Just a quick question. Is the campus track, do you have to get all your recommendations into, or is it just your application with your essay?
We're hoping by the end of August that we'll have your references and your language evaluations as well. But as long as you meet that deadline, if letters or language evaluations come in late, it's not the end of the world. It's totally fine. Because we know it's an awkward time of year. But that's, again, all the more reason to start things now. Other questions or concerns or anything that you folks would like to share? One of the things that I was really struck by, and Jayla Stevenson, by the way, is at a conference today, but she's another senior who had applied and would love to talk with people about Fulbright. And she said, as Olivia did, like, it's worth doing regardless. So it's not just me saying this, it's not that I put Olivia into a headlock and said, please come lie to people. How else has that application process been valuable as you've been applying for other things? Oh man.
I think it was definitely valuable in the sense that it made me like self-reflect and think, what do I want to do as a career path? And it's very outside of my realm of, I'm a science person through and through, and I just kind of have this little side gig tutoring and TAing for writing because I'm very passionate about communication and writing and English. And I think that I think I probably will reapply. And sorry, that doesn't really answer the question. But I think that it helped me a lot when I went into interviews, even that weren't specific to English teaching. Like I was interviewing for a marketing position, I've interviewed for research positions, and a lot of the stuff, it made me think in different ways. Like you guys would almost probe me in ways where I would start talking about things I didn't even realize were important, and I've started to bring those up in interviews more and in cover letters and all kinds of stuff like that.
Exactly. And by the way, I've seen thousands of people have that same experience, literally, actually, in 12 years of doing this. It's not very scientific, but I promise I've got results that prove that this is a valuable process if you're willing to put the work in. And I've been able to work with so many amazing people. And again, you don't have to do this alone. We've got alumni, we've got faculty, we've got the Wellesley Fulbright Committee. I have a whole team of people up in career education who would love to help you think about, well, what is relevant transferable experience for this? How does this fit into the longer term plan? Where might this take me? Part of why Sarah's applying to do this research in Canada is because she's thinking about going on and doing graduate work in geoscience. And so starting with a year of research was a really valuable way for her to sort of test the waters. She's not positive she's going on to a PhD, she's not positive she's going on to a research career, but she was able to say, I'm really seriously thinking about this, and that's why I'm applying for this. Again, everybody has particular reasons and strengths and interests and curiosities. Each and every one of you brings something interesting to the table. And part of what I love about my job is to help you figure out how to make a good and persuasive case for yourself. I know it's over time. I just want to thank very much Claire and Olivia, and I am here for questions.